It's been a while, about 6 years since this channel uploads, since Earth defeated the Honkai. They worked to rebuild the devastation caused, with many problems still needing to be figured out, like why the moon is turning red. While that's going on, the people of Earth now have the time to look outwards to the far expanses of the galaxy, as they didn't need to worry about some force of nature constantly trying to end their existence. That first place they looked to was Mars. But why Mars?
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Now, I've looked through all the lines, and it was never brought up directly why they decided to go to Mars specifically. I'd imagine it's something to do with how they came into contact with other civilizations that used to exist on other planets in the solar system. So far, the life form they have met has been shown to look and act like humans, for the most part. Whether that's saying something about their origins in relation to Earth remains to be seen, cause if Stellaris has told me anything about Xenos, is that the ones that look different must be destroyed. But anyways, what these civilizations have in common with Earth is the collective suffering under the Honkai, which goes by different names depending on each local lingo. So Earth, or rather Shixo, decided to send 2 people to scout out the 4th planet, and lo and behold, they found traces of alien life out there. Sadly, they didn't seem to have survived the embrace. In the ruins, they found an alien terminal, and you know, as humans, we are naturally curious creatures, so it's our God-given right to poke at anything we don't understand with a stick. For our 2 scouts' case, this action will have many repercussions as told by May. Suddenly that day, Kiana at the moon base just went to sleep and never woke up. They didn't know what the hell was wrong with her, but during that time she fell asleep, their sensors picked up a signal from Mars. Everything was such a convenient coincidence they decided to bring that terminal back to the moon base and study it in hopes of finding the reason why Kiana is in deep sleep. The hypothesis is that it has to do with the Honkai in Mars term, and this is where the story begins. You see, when the 2 scouts, Collery and Halia, touched it, they got sucked into what Prometheus described as a massive, Mars-sized quantum computer, which put those that went in through the scenarios the Mars civilization faced, and having them attempt to beat it. Though the focus isn't really on them fully, as the system seemed to have a particular emphasis on the digital life form called the Dreamseeker, who is like a player character you used to be able to choose between the male and the female variant, but then the male one gets nuked in lore a few chapters in, and it's just gone forever. But anyways, Mission Control back on the moon was aware of what's happening and decided to just roll with it and see what happens. At this point you may wonder, like, we are looking at an alien Elysian Realm-esque tech that pushed you through a trial, so then what would hypothetically happen if the people that went in were to fail? Turns out, nothing for now, as the conversations suggested that they had Collery and Helia attempt to beat the scenarios and fail multiple times and got out just fine. So they just kept sending them in until something happens. I don't see how this could possibly go wrong in the slightest. The main strat was to focus on helping Dreamseeker do whatever she needed to do to beat a given scenario, which always seemed to be about the Shadow Calamity. The story then actually begins with the Dreamseeker, a student studying at Oxford University doing student things, studying, and falling asleep the moment they touch a bed. Randomly, while she was sleeping, she enters a dreamlike state where her body just disappears from the plane of existence. In the dream, she meets a goddess who introduces herself as Senadina. She starts off with a lecture about Mars, then proceeded to tell her about how she's the chosen one and suggests forming a covenant with her in order to save Mars or something, while saying the equivalent of "trust me, bro." The most surprising part, Dreamseeker just goes along with it for some reason. She also gets this thing called the Astral Ring for her troubles. Dreamseeker then wakes up, not in her room, but inside a rock with that goddess who doesn't seem to be the one who she just talked to. There they meet the aliens. Keep in mind, it's very possible this was after many of their failed attempts at the scenario, but they wouldn't know that and would treat it as if they touched the terminal and got in here for the first time. After some talking, they learn that they are in a random corner in the Sea of Quanta, called the Sea of Data, simulated in this case. Also, there's this portal dog that harasses them periodically, so they go chase it around until Senna tries throwing her weapon at its portal, as it then explodes from the impact, separating the group. Dreamseeker then wakes up again in God knows where. She sees the dog just being mysterious. Some black mist along with the monsters it sometimes spawn. She's about to get jumped by them, but then suddenly a bystander came to her aid and beat up all the monsters and just disappears. She then reunites with Senna and together set out to find where the other two Earthlings went. Along the way, they get jumped again, and the girl who saved Dreamseeker earlier also appears. She didn't seem to have been the same one that saved Dreamseeker earlier, if it was even real to begin with. This iteration of our savior seemed to be quite friendlier and not the combat type, as she tells the duo to just... After getting to a safe place and talking a bit, she introduces herself as Songxue and gave the name of this place, Langqiu. And also, that dog's name was Duolingo. She decides to take them to the part that was the most livable around here while naming out everything they come across. This is the shadows. It spawns monsters. This is a big ass nail. It keeps the shadows away. This is a fear gathering. You pay fear to get stuff from the shadows. Those who controls fear controls the shadows. These people are called Shus. At this point, it's no question that the shadows, as they call it, is just the mass term for Honkai. For some reason, the Dreamseeker is quite good at this shadow stuff. It's almost like she had done this many times before. They eventually get to the only good part in town called Amber Street. There they reunites with the two Earthlings, and summarizing what we have been told so far, the group is currently in a Mars bubble universe made to escape the Great Depression. I mean, eruption that happened. In this case, the people could somehow live by integrating Honkai in their daily life, which is quite an achievement, albeit not in a long-term sense, as we would soon see. Right now, the Dreamseeker still wants to find her way back home. The Earthlings then just tag along to find a way to communicate with their mission control. Senna is just there for some good times, and Songxue will just help them get out of this place. They get to the place you could consider the gateway, where they see this thing, which the Dreamseeker recognized as the anchor of the apocalypse in her hometown. From what I'm getting, it's like the ether anchor of her bubble universe. The revelation is that Oxia, where she lives, used to be in the same world as Langqiu. While that's going on, Senna tried touching the anchor, which seemed to have reacted as it transported everyone to Oxia except Collery, who was in the back for some reason. Now left behind, she is met by this floating gadget that calls itself Perception. You could think of it as the substitute for one of the Shus around here, 1/5 as it calls itself. It sold her the idea of enlisting the help of the Shus who owns it or something so she can get out of this place. Seeing no better option, she decides to roll with it. Apparently, the Shus seem to have fell asleep over the years and needed some procedures to wake up properly. Meanwhile at Oxia, it seems there was more than the group that got through the gate. They could somehow still communicate thanks to the floating gadget they found. Basically, it shouldn't be this easy to do that, and there's a high chance it's the shadows. Then nothing much really happens as it's mostly lore dumping. The story goes that when the Great Eruption hits and everything is getting eaten by the Sea of Quanta, those who controls the shadows, the Shus, split Langqiu and Oxia and made them into their own bubble universe. Langqiu was the containment for the shadows, while Oxia gets to be free of it. To keep the shadows here in Langqiu, they nail the thing down by infusing their powers into these nails to prevent the shadows from destroying Langqiu. The catch is, the Shus will hibernate as time goes on. Now to wake them up, you just yank out those nails that's keeping the shadows away. What could possibly go wrong? Meanwhile, Darklord and the gadget pulled out the nail belonging to a Shu named Letost, which causes the dog to return to Langqiu as it has a special connection to him. During this window, Collery was able to get to Oxia and reunites with the rest. The plan is simple: get that dog. Getting back to Langqiu, the group sees that the place looked a bit worse than they have left it. You see, Letost and this dog has a bit of history. Letost, back in the day of the Great Eruption, actually made this Sea of Shadows with these nails that kept it pinned down to keep the world as is. Now, his dog is going around removing the nails and seems to be trying to take control of this pool of shadows for itself as a shadow entity. So the group thinks that in order to catch it, they need to jump into the Sea of Shadows. This wasn't actually the road to the boss fight, as it's a lore dump segment, but after a while, Songxue realizes they made a horrible mistake and tells the group to evacuate and get to this particular nail. There, they found the dog and they go beat it up.
What the dog doing? shift into maximum overdrive. Hi-ya!
Once they beat it, they decided to enslave it for the funnies, and now they are left to fix the mess this thing caused. And because of how things have progressed, they still would need to wake up all the Shus to fix the mess anyway. So I guess we're back to pulling nails. The next Shu they are going to attempt to wake up is Sarah. Apparently, she applies her shadow powers by making a hive mind where all is well, and anyone who union with her becomes one with her. The gang get to the place where she resides, the library, and before they go in, they set up a TP beacon just in case, while also leaving the dog outside as a sentry to repent for its sin. Moving on, the group then do some puzzles and hear some words from Sarah for some reason. Songxue reassures them to not worry about it. It's not like half of them are going to get sucked into the hive mind and be out of action for a while. Also, there's this Shu hunting them down, and unfortunately, this one is kind of a muscle brain that cannot be reasoned with. So they hightail it out of there and lay low for the time being. While discussing their next move, by that I mean law dumps, they came up with a plan. They will go into the hive mind and convince the ones in there to leave. Luckily, Lantern wasn't posted up waiting for them. Though with their immense dodging skills, they escaped into Sarah's consciousness where they found the Earthlings seem to have been enjoying themselves. And then there's Senna, who seems to be fine but cannot find her way out. Somehow she says, "Trust me, bro," and we don't get to see what actually happens after that, but everyone leaves Sarah's consciousness and go fight Lantern in the real world. Fortunately, Sarah also wakes and broke up the fight. And for the Shu of Muscle Brain, she shows restraint and leaves them alone for now. At this point, the group considers that to fix the mess, they are going to need to wake every single Shu to do what they did back then when they made the world. And there's like a few potential targets they can go for. It could be Songxue's master, who's the big dog of the Shus, but then it's like a bit hard to wake him up until the rest has been awakened, so they settled for someone easier. Felma. The group knows about this Shu and is confident they are going to wake her up without any issues. Same plan. Now that they're in the place, the TP beacon doesn't work because according to Perception, who made it, it's a free version so it's naturally shite. The same thing happens as a few minutes after they enter the place, Lantern is now knocking at the doors again. For some reason, Perception is able to leave and meet her head on because she's just built different, I guess, but we'll get to that later. Back in the floating castle, the group gets a history lesson on Felma as they advance. They get to a boss arena looking area as Lantern catches up, and she spouts something about her investigation pointing to Songxue being the one behind it all. Seeing no better option, they fight out their disagreement. But alas, nothing ever happens, as Felma appears to break up the fight. And this being the only situation in which Lantern actually listens, she leaves the group alone. Also, it turns out Felma was awake the whole time and all that history lesson was just propaganda to improve her image among the group. The group is off to the next target, the creator of Perception, Agitta. They got to the CF data for some reason and they found Agitta, who's not breathing and has been that way for quite some time. Perception is also there, just chilling after leading Lantern to this place. Dreamseekers then starts feeling funny again and then they leave the place in a hurry. Notice the haze on the sides. This will be very important later. Right now, things are not looking good. These big ball of shadows in the sky are going to kill them all, which isn't the surprising part really, cause what they've been doing is just making it go faster anyway. At least if they wake all the Shus up, they could probably have them fix the mess before it gets any crazier. The group decides to retreat back to Oxia for now, but Lantern follows them there. Fortunately, she fell for a ruse. This gives the group a head start to prepare for the battle. Their battle plan was to abuse the Shus' territories and the powers there to even the odds out. They go to Sarah's library, but she isn't there for some reason, which defeats the whole point, so they head to Felma's place instead. Not only did they not find Felma, they walked straight into a trap set by Lantern. But once again, nothing ever happens as Songxue's master, Baiji, shows up to break up the fight. Also, the arena they're fighting in isn't even real and a construct of his power. He then say, "Trust me, bruv," and sends the group minus Songxue back to Oxia. The rest of the gang is quite mad. They send them back without being able to say bye to Songxue and decides to hightail it back to Langqiu. There they reunites with her, who reassures them everything is going to be fine. With their flags bearing left and right, the 7 Shus prepare to solve the crisis in Langqiu. Senna seems to not be feeling well and passes out. The Earthling notices signs of Honkai infection on her and decides to get her to Songxue's master, who diagnoses her with astral ring overexertion and cures her just as easily. Everything is fine for now as they go to the anchor to perform the ritual. Songxue changes into her new shiny outfit for the occasion and says farewell to the group, and they headed their separate ways. The group could tell she's hiding something but respects her decisions and leaves. Meanwhile, Lantern and Duolingo was killing time by investigating Agitta's death. But then Lantern's hunch tells her that Perception is kinda sus, so they go meet with it. Somehow this led to her going around killing all the Shus for some reason. On their way back to Oxia, the group is intercepted by Perception, who tells them that they are being lied to and shows them a few pictures. According to her, Baiji was lying to them. Most of the Shus are now dead and Songxue is probably next. Upon being dropped this bomb, they rush back to save their friends, thinking Baiji was the bad guy. It also doesn't help that he always talks in abstract riddles, so it's easy to make himself look mega sus. And according to him, killing Songxue would end the shadows, but the rest of the Shus wasn't his doing. Perception seizes the opportunity and stabs Baiji, ending him. Up to this point, people has been treating Perception like a sentient tool of the Shu who created it and like a substitute. But now, it reveals its true color. It's not a Shu, it's the shadows itself. Like a Herrscher. It also was the one who killed the rest of the Shus, by the way, so I'm not sure what that lantern moment was about. If you know, please tell me. Now that the big dog of the Shu is dead, that floating shadow boy in the sky reaches its zenith and everyone fucking dies. Nothing ever happens, as what we have just witnessed starting from when this thin haze appears was a dream in Dreamseeker's head. Baiji actually leveraged his power to have Dreamseeker simulate the conclusion, and now that Perception out itself as the big bad, they go capture it. You might have some question about how this Wheel of Shadow was able to sit around and be Agitta's substitute for so long. Well, unbeknownst to the group, it made a deal with Agitta, or more like Agitta used it, cause she seemed to be somehow aware of the true nature of this world. Back in the day, Baiji tried to contain the shadows in the astral ring that Agitta seemed to have brought in from the outside. And if you know anything about what happens when you put a lot of Honkai energy in a single place, a Herrscher can be created. When Dreamseeker told Baiji about what she saw, she hid the fact that he did try to take out Songxue in order to stop the shadows, but later brought it up with the rest of the gang anyway. So by taking Perception out of the process, it means that everything could still be on track to happen the same way, except this time there wouldn't be no Perception to derail the process. The gang then sends Dreamseeker to keep Songxue company and have her attempt to talk her out of it. The next scene was actually beautiful, but the Dreamseeker ultimately fails. The group then fell for Songxue's ruse, as she's now at the place already. Fortunately, Baiji could not bring himself to end Songxue. He instead tells her about one last crazy plan. They're going to gather all the shadows and attempt to reshape Perception into a good god.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
After some prep talk, all of them gathered at the place to start the god-shaping ritual. And for some reason, this thing looks like Songxue. While they wait for the process to complete, they get to a safe spot and discuss their tactics. The dog elects to stay behind for some reason. Perception awakes in the new body. She then meets Duolingo and attempts to sweet talk it into giving up some info on the heroes. This didn't work as she quickly drops the act. The dog plays it cool and feigns defecting, allowing Perception to walk a few meters before it jumps her, but really it was quite futile. As for the rest, their battle plan was just to pull off the same thing they did back in the day, attempting to take control of the shadows, which you would think would risk them empowering the Herrscher like it did the first time, like they created it that time. But you see, this time, the target is actually a tangible thing you can touch, so in theory they think they can just beat it up and weaken it enough to just increase the chance of success. They just need to stall long enough for that to happen. Unfortunately, not all the Shus could participate as they are spent from that maneuver they pulled earlier. This is where the aliens come in. Heading to the battle, the gang came across what's left of the dog, but it wasn't actually all in vain, as the dog's power and somehow Latos from the dead left a convenient path for the group to go straight to the boss. They stalled long enough for time, but even then it wasn't enough to beat perception. At this pivotal moment, Songxue went to the backup plan, the self-destruct plan that would take her with it. At least that's what people thought. It's been a few days since Songxue went missing, and everyone assumes the worst. Everything is good, the shadows has been banished, both worlds can freely travel as they work to rebuild. The gang go to visit the arena where they fought in hopes of finding a miracle, and a miracle they get. After all, as Collery points out, it's not exactly news that a Herrscher can come back from the dead. Seeley did it once, and also this man, twice. It's time to turn her funeral into a party. Hopefully you haven't forgotten all of this was just a simulation. The Dreamseeker has failed this countless times before winning this one time. What she would do next now that she just realized she's been in the Samsara, that's a story for another time. This review was a gut punch, like we have spent so much time with them, like hours of playtime, only for the story to say, well actually none of that was real to begin with, nor really matters at all. I was pissed. Which, looking back at it, kind of lines up with how the Dreamseeker herself reacted to the review, and I guess it's the dev's way of putting us in her shoes. But I digress. Channel update. I said this video was supposed to come out many months earlier, but all my free time disappeared when all the thesis revisions came through. Frankly, I underestimated the subject, and now that I've finished, I will try my best to get back to speed and start posting again. So thank you for your patience of sticking around and having patience with me. And remember, nothing ever happens until it does.